A very warm welcome and happy new year to Capital Sports 3.0. Or should have said that in reverse or whatever way I mixed it up, but it doesn't make a difference. It's 2026 and there is a lot happening around the world. In the world of sports, it's also getting a little bit, let's just say, difficult. And the will it or won't it happen question about the World Cup, FIFA World Cup 2026, is very much on the table, but we're not going to speak about that today. That's for another day. And Isold Cody, our legal, has all the ins and outs of what's happening with FIFA and UEFA and how they're going to deal with this complete mess that is Greenland and UEFA and Denmark and USA and God knows what else. So we're going to go very, very basic. We're going to come relatively local, but also giving a nice bit of an insight into how you, as one of our viewers, can actually get working in professional football. Because, of course, not all of us are talented enough to actually go play in a field. Not all of us are talented enough to be coaches, and not all of us are rich enough to buy ourselves a football club and to then, play football manager, not on the computer, but actually in real life. So we're going to go to St. Petersburg in Russia, to a man who I've known for a long, long time, about a decade. And I'll say that it's his journey has been very interesting, and there's been a few bumps in the road and one quite major bump recently. We'll speak about that a little bit later on. But we're going to start off speaking with Mark Bullen, who is the international media editor for Zenit St. Petersburg, of course, one of the top clubs in Russia. Mark, you're very welcome to Capital Sports. What's the weather like in St. Pete's at the moment?
Hello, Alan. Thank you very much for having me on. Always listen, so it's a real honour to be on here. The weather, it's quite mild for us. I look now, it's -4 and cloudy. We haven't had snow for a while, and the slush is almost gone. So it's like that lovely sweet spot at the moment. But we're due -20 on Saturday and Sunday. So back to the cold.
Okay, just the main thing is that once that slush is gone, then it doesn't freeze, and then you don't fall. That's the most important thing. Mark, we're going to start off. The logical thing would be to ask, how did you get involved in Zenit? But I want to ask for something that's very, very important and something we brought up in the show quite a lot, and something that's always been a focus when we're on the radio, for example, of what happens with these young Russian players now that they don't have the international exposure at the very, very top level. Of course, the Russian national team are doing great, playing friendlies with Grenada and Kazakhstan and so on, or Belarus. But these youngsters who are massively talented, coming through very, very good coaching systems and really deserve to be playing at the top of the Champions League level, top Europa League, top Conference League, but they don't have that chance. The first question is that lack of European football and international football, is that a hindrance for Russian football and Russian talents? And the second is, who are some of the talents coming through that people should actually start to Google and look at on YouTube?
Yes, it's a great question, Alan, about this European thing. It's a big discussion point within Russian football. I'm very, very positive about the state of players coming through and the whole youth production system we've got in Russia at the moment, the RPL. There's some really top academies right through, from not just in the Premier League, but right through the whole Russian football pyramid. Krasnodar and Zenit are the ones everyone talks about, but Loco are producing some great players. And even if you go right down to the south, and I think they're in the third tier now in the PFL, or it's got a different name now. But Alanya Vladikavkaz last season have opened up their own state-of-the-art academy at a real high level down there. So I'm quite positive about the whole thing. The academy structure is really taking off in Russia, and I think in the next decade we're going to see lots and lots of very, very good players coming through. Now, yeah, the lack of European football, hopefully it won't last too much longer. We're all hoping that next season we'll be back, and that's the positive outlook I hope we're having. But there are some very, very good, I mean, before I talk about the very, very good young players that we've got at the moment, but the Russian national team, midfield, I think we've got a plethora of talent who are all in their prime. And even Golovin, who was the big star of the 2018 World Cup, is still in his 20s. Glushenkov at Zenit, one of our star player at the moment. Mostovoy, mid-20s. Fomin at Dinamo, I think, is 26. There's some great young players at the moment, but coming through, I think there's going to be some great talent. Midfield, in goal, we've got loads of great goalkeepers in Russia. We always have done. But to answer your question, young players, I'll give you two names. One name everyone knows. Anyone who follows Russian football knows the lad at Lokomotiv Batalakov. He's been a sensation this season. Arguably the best player of the season. As a Zenit fan, I would go for Glushenkov, but if you said Batalakov, I couldn't argue. He's been excellent. He looks like a real star in the making, and I'd imagine there's going to be some top European clubs sniffing around him, and I hope Russia can hold on to him. He's excellent, but the lad, the real star, I think has produced and will be the big star of the next decade is our lad at Zenit, Vadim Shilov. He's only 17, made his debut in August this season in the first team at age 16. And on his debut, he scored and he came on, scored and won a penalty on his debut. He's by far the most exciting player I've seen us produce from the academy in my 10 years at Zenit. He looks sensational. The way he runs, those players who've got a perfect directional sense and understand the way the game's going, he's got that. And I'm very, very excited about him in particular.
As you mentioned, I mean, last year that sort of I always joke the kind of the cycle of abuse between Moscow and St. Petersburg was broken by Krasnodar. Now, of course, yes. Krasnodar, let's look at it objectively. It was a club that was built up, kind of like got its way up to the Premier League through fair or foul. I have questions about it because of the way they got promoted. But at the same time, they've built solidly. They built on a community base. They've done everything through private investment. So with Galeski, of course, with government assistance because you can't, they were using government land and so on. How refreshing was that last year for a fan of Russian football and football in general to see a club break through that glass ceiling? And it was a glass ceiling.
It was. I mean, okay, taking my Zenit hat off, yeah, everyone should be delighted to see them win it. They play nice football. They're, like you said, they're a community club. They've built a great stadium, and Krasnodar and the whole South region is a real hotbed of football, isn't it? So, obviously, I was upset that we lost the title, and we're 1 point behind them this season. But they are a great club. Okay. At the moment, they've been buying players in. They've got a lot of non-Russian players in there. But they're who they've produced. Safonov at PSG at the moment from there, and the current Russian goalkeeper, his name escapes me now. The current Russian goalkeeper is a Krasnodar keeper. I'd be happy. We've seen CSKA win it, we've seen Loco win it, we've seen Spartak win it, we've seen Zenit win, and it's great to have someone else win the title. I think you look around Europe now, and it's the opposite, isn't it? In England, it's City. Maybe someone City, Liverpool, Germany, France, everywhere. And we've probably, I don't think any leagues had as many winners as us over the last 15 years. No,
and it is something that, and again, I would never begrudge Zenit their titles simply because they put the work in on and off the field. They had the players, they had the stability at board and on the bench level as well. When you look at the likes of Spartak, where God help them, I mean, it's a huge club. It's the biggest club in Russia by far. I mean, it is that kind of like they are huge, but yet there seems to be this constant lack of direction and pandering to fans' needs. Whereas Zenit, even when there were calls for heads of coaches and so on, the board mostly, and I mean, even with Mancini, mostly they have stood the course, said, listen, we are doing this and this is how we're moving on. So you take a very practical decision. Krasnodar are slightly different than that, Mark. They do have a history of chopping and changing every so often. Do you think that's going to maybe hamper them further down the line, or do you think that they've kind of found their man now?
No, I mean, no, they look solid. They've got the squad's good, the management's good, and the board's good there. And the word you use there, stability. They've got the stability. And at Zenit, that's Sergei Semak, the guy is just fantastic what he's done. When he took over, we were in a real slump. We'd had the Lukescu Mancini era, and we weren't playing the football we're playing now. So all credit to Sergei Samek, all credit to the board. They've been fantastic. And yeah, Krasnodar follow that model. But like you say, Spartak chopping and changing, rows between the club and the fans. And yeah, they are a huge club, absolutely. Not as big as Zenit, in my opinion, but we'll have to differ on that one. But I mean, comparison to Manchester United, you hear it quite a lot. Or what's going on in Manchester, they're trying to recapture that glory, and they're really struggling. And stability is the key. And some of their appointments have been ridiculous. They're a management appointment. People have got no experience in Russian football, and it is a difficult league. It's a very different league from other places. Tedesco, I thought that I find that very strange, and the way he behaved while he was their manager, it was bizarre. You can't be like that in Russia. So
no, and I mean they also had, like, when they had Yakin, and Yakin came in and he was doing a good job, but yet they allowed a kind of this wonder players who I'm not going to mention, but used the kind of the Turkish Armenia thing against him, and for me it was puzzling why the board backed the player over the coach, and then the fans got involved. And I mean, it's and it always goes back to me when I was working on a project with Spartak and Unai Emery was there, and it was difficult for him. I mean, he had a tough time with it, but the treatment that he got from the club and the undermining that went on, when I saw it firsthand, I'd never seen it anywhere else in football. It was a shocker to me, and how he was treated in the end was just a disgrace. And just basically they lose on the Saturday, and then on Monday morning he was told to report to the offices with his suitcases, and left sitting for hours. Mark, on that, working in football, because a lot of people, of course, as I mentioned, they had this like dream. Oh, I'd love to work in football. I want to have a career in football. Many people are focused in on working within the administration of a club, and again they had this idea of, I'm playing Football Manager and I'll do this and I'll do that, but you found a way of going into the media side, social media, and in all fairness, everybody who has followed Zenit, the English language media, it's been winning awards. It's still the best of the best, and it's magnificently enjoyable to experience and read. And also in Irish language as well. So it's all, you've grown more than any other Russian club, and many international clubs as well. I mean, big clubs with bigger budgets and bigger money to put into what to do behind the scenes. First of all, how did you get involved with Zenit itself? How did you get the job? And secondly, what would you advise people who maybe have a bit of a, kind of not a wanderlust, but a kind of a desire to go abroad, challenge themselves, and to get involved with a club in a non-English language, non-English speaking country?
Thank you for the compliments, first of all. Yeah, the winning the awards thing was 2021 when we won the Football Content Awards, which is the biggest sort of social media football award. That was a real high for us, and we're really proud of that. But if you don't mind, I'll answer your second question first about how do young people get into football. My cat's just getting on the thing. Get down, you. So getting into football, well, the way I've hired a few young lads in my time as it. So I've been at the club over 10 years now. We've had a few people come and work with us. And the way I've found them, they've all been passionate football fans who I found online. So I scan, I read all the blogs, and I keep an eye on good Twitter accounts. And there used to be a lot more, but I try and keep it. Anyone who's talking about Russian football, I follow them and I keep an eye on them. And I was looking for someone to work alongside me and cover our youth teams, Zenit 2, Zenit Women. It was just a bit too much for me. So I had a scout around, and I found a lad called Alfie who was writing about Russian football online, knew his stuff, entertaining account. So I headhunted him, and I've done a similar thing for our Spanish accounts. I found a blogger who was writing about Russian football in Spanish. About 4 or 5 times, our TikTok lad, we found him. He was running a football TikTok. Our TikTok's the best in the world, we think. And I think we're number 4 in the entire football world for followers on TikTok. We're only behind Real, Barca, and I think it's Borussia Dortmund. And he was, we basically, all these people were headhunted. So what I would say to anyone, if you love Russian football and you want to work in Russian football, choose your topic. If you love local, or if you love Kuban Krasnodar, for example, if you love the third tier, Start writing about it. Get your name out there. Just get on X, get on Instagram, and make contact. And just, I would say, work hard. The harder you work, the luckier you'll get. And if you know, and particularly Russian football, there aren't that many English speaking fans, so you can really make your name for yourself quickly. So my advice is work hard, make contacts. Don't be afraid to send emails to the clubs and say, look, I notice you haven't got an English language X account. Maybe I can help you. Get in that way. Volunteer. Just work hard, get your name out there, and that can happen. Now, as for me, I was quite lucky. So when I moved to Russia in 2014. Big football fan. Wherever I've lived, abroad in a few different countries. Wherever I've lived, I've gone and watched my local team. I lived in Poland for a while. I was watching Wyszkowa Bug in some low-level Polish league. In Riga, Daugavpils, when I lived there for 6 months, I was watching them. So I was in Petersburg, so I was watching Zenit, going to every match. Friend of a friend of a friend knew someone who worked at the club in HR and said, "Oh, there's an English guy who's going to all the matches. I see him at the stadium." And they happened to be looking for someone to do social media. I had a little bit of a background in social. I'd done in my previous job. On the side, I'd done social media for them, and I will talk about that later for the police. So when I was a policeman in England, I also ran our local Twitter X account, and I know how cringe police accounts are. I promise you, mine wasn't like that. And yeah, the club contacted me and said, "We hear you've done this, you've done it. Would you like to come in for an interview?" I went in for an interview. There was me and a couple of other chaps, I think 2 Americans, and I got the job. And 10 years later, I'm still here. So that's the story.
And I mean, it is one of those things that and I've said it before. You kind of know my background as well. Is that okay? I come from a sporting background, from professional sports, but at the same time, I graduated as an archaeologist and a geographer. I was, my dream was to be Indiana Jones. That was it. Playing football and so on. And at the same time, it was one of those, how do you say, moments in my life when I started volunteering and then getting brought in to help and say, listen, you know what's going on. Can you help with this? Can you, give us some advice? Then going into a commercial department. And no matter what country it was, like you say, doesn't make a difference. Clubs are happy if an outsider comes in. They might not take all you say on board, and you have to be mindful as well. These people know what they're doing. You're not going to basically teach them how to suck eggs. You basically, if you do it the right way, they'll bring you on board. And obviously that's worked with you and Zenit. One question as well, and if now shoot me down if I'm wrong on this. You also did the ADC for the World Cup in Zenit in St. Petersburg.
Yes, I was doing the in-stadium commentary for FIFA. Again, that was through contact. That was just through people friend of a friend of a friend. So just right place, right time. But I think you can put it down to working hard and helping people out. When people ask you for a favour, people are always asking you for a favour. You've done me a massive favour recently. I knew you. You contacted me. You've done me a favour, and that's how things work, isn't it? In life, you work hard, you help people out, and it does come back to you. So, I was very lucky. Again, through contacts, I was doing the in-stadium commentary at the World Cup at Gazprom Arena, and I managed to get to see every game and get paid for it. It was like a dream.
And the one thing as well is that with that, people don't understand, because I've done that before, and we had Phelan Warren on with us, who does it for Shamrock Rovers, for example, in Ireland. People don't understand how important that is. And even still in Russia, it's still in many places in its infancy. I know Loco have reinforced within the club, but it doesn't work all the time. How good was it to know that, as well as commentating on games, you're actually doing a social service as well?
Oh, it was lovely. Yeah. So I was only the second commentator. The main guy was a guy called Leonid Tentsev. You might know him. He does. He used to do the championship on Russian TV, cover the British Championship, and he's a professional commentator, and he helped me, gave me some lessons before, and taught me, and we watched a bit of Brian Moore together. But yeah, for the deaf fans in the state, it was great to do it. And I spoke to a couple of people afterwards. They said, I said, that was me. Oh, that was you, and it was great. And it's actually we've maintained it at the Gazprom Arena to this day. Not in English anymore. We were doing it in English while we had Champions League, But every game we have a Russian commentator in the stadium provided, and it's free for any of our fans hard of hearing.
Or hard of sight.
Sorry, hard of sight. Hard of sight. We got that the wrong way around. That'd be no good. Yeah, hard of sight.
It's like, yeah. No, but again, it is one of those things that the likes of Zenit, for example, because you did mention like youth sides, women's sides, women, came up from almost nothing and now are an established team, won the Women's Premier League. And Zenit is, it's hard to say St. Petersburg is a one club town. It is, but I'm sorry, that's just the way many big cities are, and it's just the way it is. It's just that it's not even the amount of money put behind them. It's just because they've been very consistent what they've done and they've continued developing. So yeah, again, it's great with the ADC. It's putting back, and of course, getting paid to commentate at a World Cup and watch the games. It's brilliant. It's a dream come true. Now, of course, everyone knows that Zenit's owned by Gazprom. Gazprom is the Russian government or the state gas company, also involved in oil and retail and explorations and so on. And of course, heavily sanctioned. And, so much bad stuff said about it, but yet not enough said about the good that they have done and they continue to do in terms of sport, culture, health, medicine, research, everything. Not that long ago, I won't say came out, but that's a different connotation. You spoke about and you kind of revealed that you had become one of those people that's back in Roman times, people were proscribed, where they basically were not allowed to get, well, you weren't proscribed per se, but who were basically, you cannot give them any shelter, food, because you could be killed, and then they had to just basically leave the empire or be killed if they were caught. So they had to travel. It's happened to journalists in Europe, but you, as a football club employee, dual citizen, British and Russian, of course, with married 4 kids in St. Pete's, you were stripped of your British citizenship, so stripped of your passport. So now, if you want to go back to visit family, if you want to go back home, you have to get a visa to go visit the UK. How did that come about, first of all, and what has been the impact so far on you?
Yes, so early in October, I received an email from the Home Secretary telling me that my British citizenship was being revoked, completely out of the blue. I was not expecting it. There was no explanation given, no evidence presented. I was aghast. I couldn't believe it. So part of the order of revoking my citizenship included an anonymity order that no one could be told and the press couldn't be told. So I kept it quiet. I applied for it to be extended, and they gave me a short extension but refused to extend it any further. And then on the 9th of January, it was due to end. So I thought I'd rather get my story out before they brief against me, as I don't know what I'm supposed to have done. And through a friend of a friend, again, I spoke to someone at the Daily Mail, and they got the story out there, and it's really snowballed since then. However, the start of this all is a year previously. I went to visit the UK every year, like most people here. I go and visit home once a year. I normally go just before Christmas. Arrive in the UK November 2024, and we're all told on the landing at London Luton to leave the plane via the back door and to present your passports immediately at the plane door. I did so, and as I did, I was detained by men not in uniform, without any identification, forcibly detained, told to hand over my electronic items, which I did, and then told under the Terrorism Act they were going to question me. I asked who they were repeatedly. They refused to tell me. I said they didn't have any identification. They weren't wearing warrant cards or badges. I was frog marched through passport control to an interrogation room. I was denied any legal rights. Apparently, under the new UK terrorism law, people aren't entitled to legal advice. I wasn't cautioned because they don't need to caution you. You have no legal rights. And it is a crime not to answer a question. You can't maintain silence, or you can't just say no. You can't go no comment, which I can't. I was aghast at this. Bear in mind, I'm a former policeman. They were saying, if you don't answer this question, you've committed a crime, and we'll look at remanding you to prison. I was, what's going on? You know, I'm a quiet family man. I've got 4 kids. I work in football. What on earth do you want? They questioned me for 4 hours in very unpleasant circumstances in a freezing cold room in November. All my outer clothes was taken from me, my socks, my shoes. I was denied water. I asked for water many, many times. Eventually, I was given a tiny, not even a vodka shot of water. It was honestly, it was akin to what you'd expect from the Stasi, not in Great Britain. I was asked about who I voted for in the Russian general election. I was asked about the Skripals, and I said, "What about the Skripals?" And they said, "What do you know about the Skripals?" I don't know anything. What do you know about Salisbury? I was asked the most ridiculous questions about Russia. You can't imagine. And I was telling them, "What is this? The Mad Hatter's Tea Party? This is ridiculous." And they did the whole good cop, bad cop thing, where one of them was very, very aggressive to me, while the other one was my best friend. I only managed to work out it was the British Police Special Branch when after about 20 minutes, someone was sent through to give me a more thorough search, and it was a guy I used to work with in Stevenage, and I said, "Oh, I know you," and he blanked me and said, "No, I'm just a man doing my job." I managed to after the 4 hours of questions, I was taken through to have my DNA, fingerprints, and photographed. Not the usual photographs. All my clothes were removed, and I was photographed in my underwear. And while I managed to talk to the cop officers there, different ones, I managed to gather enough information to know that they were police and they were special branch. But I was released the next morning. They kept my phones, which they returned to me 8 days later. And I thought that was the end of it. I thought, this is just madness, just because I live in Russia. Went back to Russia, didn't think anything more. I thought, well, I won't be going to England for a few years. I'll give it a wide berth until things calm down in the UK. And then, in October, we're taking your passport, and there is an anonymity order, a gagging order. I couldn't believe it. And fortunately, since I've spoke, they sent me a list of, you can contact these people for legal advice, all of which were linked to the media. They were all lawyers at BBC, lawyers at The Sun, lawyers at News International, that sort of thing. None of them replied to me. So I had no legal advice. Obviously, you can't pay for legal advice being in Russia because of the sanctions. So I was in real lumber. But thanks to speaking to RT, that has really given me a lot of media presence, and 2 law firms have stepped forward offering to defend me. And I'm in the process of getting the ball rolling on that and trying to reclaim my citizenship. But after what's gone on, I've got grave doubts about ever returning to the UK. Fortunately, I'm very happy in Russia. My life is great. This is a wonderful country, and if I want to stay here anyway, so it's not the end of the world. It's a bit dramatic, but we'll get through it, and life goes on.
In saying that, I mean, okay, the obvious questions are: have you done anything that would be considered a threat? Because again, you're an ex-policeman, so you know the law. So have you done anything that, for example, call for free Palestine, call to nuke London, like insulted Keir Starmer? Have you done anything like that, either like online, for example? Because that's where the battleground is now. Have you done anything like that?
No, not at all. Up until the last week or so, I had almost no social media presence. I had a sock Twitter account I used to watch stuff with, and just this week to publicise things I've made. So no, I have called Keir Starmer a lot of things in private. Certainly, I think we all have. But I've done nothing, absolutely nothing. I can't think possibly what I've done. When they were questioning me, they go, "Who do you know in the Russian government?" I said, "I don't know anyone in the Russian government." And then they said, "Who do you know in the Russian police?" I said, "Well, I know dozens of people in the Russian police." So I've got my old, I arranged exchanges with the British and Russian police. We had 6 officers come and spend a week with Hertfordshire Police, and I spent a month with the Russian police. So, and I arranged exchanges with the Latvian, Ukrainian, American, Czech, French, Italian polices. It was my second passion in the police, the International Police Association. So I've done absolutely nothing. I've heard many theories about why I've been selected to be picked on, but I can deny any wrongdoing. Absolutely.
Now, it's not, of course, as you jokingly said to me about that. It was that the fact that you won
Oh,
the British Embassy Fantasy Football Premier League. I mean,
yes, I won it
that
last year.
doesn't
I'm the
seem to
champion
be
of the
the
British
case.
Embassy. Yeah, maybe it's revenge for
But hold
that. I
on,
don't know.
hold on, hold
They
on.
haven't invited me this year.
But hold on, Mark. But let's wait a second. Step back. Um, British Embassy, that you're in that pool, that, like, WhatsApp group or whatever.
Hmm.
Surely they don't have, like, Kim Philby's long gone, so they don't, like, so you're not like spying on the British Embassy. It's not that. So where's the logic in this? Because I also know that they were looking to, like, you've been in every sense an ambassador for British culture, British education, British quality in St. Petersburg alone. So it doesn't seem logical that the embassy would turn around and say this guy is a bad one.
Alan, I really don't know. Yeah, I used to arrange we had the annual quiz night. The Brits here. I used to, once the consulate shut in 2019 or 17. I can't remember. 2019, I think the British consulate here
Yeah.
was closed down, and I'm quite passionate about the history in St. Petersburg. And if you football started in St. Petersburg in Russia, just up the road from me, with a game between the British factory workers and the Russian factory workers. It was the first ever match in Russia. The first ever head of the Russian Football Federation, tennis, got I've forgotten his name now. It's terrible of me. McPherson, I think. Anyway, a Scotsman. I shouldn't claim his English. A Scotsman was one of the biggest pioneers of sport in this country. And at the turn of the revolution, there were 2,000 Brits living in St. Petersburg. It was, other than Finns, which weren't counted as Finns, they were part of the Russian Empire. Brits were the biggest minority in Petersburg, and I was quite passionate about the history of that. There's the British hospital here. There was lots. So I used to sort of maintain the local community, and and I was good friends with people at the embassy. They invited me around down to. I watched a World Cup qualifier down there with them, and they, and I would organise things on their behalf here. So I'm shocked. I can't explain it. I've heard people give me theories. They're using you as an example to put British people off coming here. Some people have mentioned about the shared values visa thing. They want to scare Brits off applying for that. But I don't know. I can't tell you. I've racked my brains. I can't tell you.
Do you feel betrayed?
Well, as you get older, you'd sort of, you know what life's like. Then you're all fair in love and war and all that. And so surprised, I wouldn't say betrayed, surprised, insulted a bit. I mean, I as soon as it happened, I messaged the embassy and I messaged my friends, who I thought were my friends at the embassy, saying, is this real? Can you help me? And the replies I got was, you need to seek independent legal advice. And so, I don't know, not thought about feeling betrayed, but not happy about it.
No, because it is something that kind of to try and deal with, because of course, you had a gagging order on you, which is a classical thing, so that, like, it's to scare you to not take immediate action and to scare you off. When you had that, I mean, what was going through your head? Because I mean, how are we able to process it? Because for anybody who has been in such a situation, it's a burden that's extremely heavy to carry.
Well, I didn't tell anyone when I got arrested. I wasn't arrested, detained under the Terrorism Act, which just sounds. When they stopped me and said terrorism, I said, "Are you insane? Terrorism?" So I didn't tell anyone about that. And when it happened, my first thoughts were, "Oh, how am I going to tell my grandmother about this?" Because she's, the person I'm closest to in England. She's in her 80s. And I thought, God, how am I going to tell her about this? So I thought, so I didn't tell anyone. I just kept it quiet. I thought, I won't tell anyone. There's this anonymity order. Fine. I'll just live with it. But then when they said the anonymity order is being lifted, I thought, oh no, I'm going to have to tell people now. And so that was, that was my biggest concern. Telling my grandmother, telling my sister, and and my ex-police friends, having to tell them, say, look, you better know, my friends in the UK, I was arrested under the Terrorism Act. I'm going to have my citizenship. I had my citizenship stripped. If you don't want to speak to me anymore, I fully understand. And unfortunately, nearly all of them have taken me up on that offer. So those are my first thoughts.
It is something that has rippled because I've been in contact with many British and Irish, and especially dual citizens as well, and they've been severely rattled. So, as you mentioned, if this is a kind of laying down a marker to say, you know, keep your mouth shut, you know, keep your heads down, it has worked. I mean, I saw at the very start, I was stupid trying to point out where media was playing games in March, April 2022, and was immediately put back and say, like, you know, shut your mouth or you'll be run out of town. But at the same time, there are people now who will watch this and hear this. Again, same two-question idea. Anyone who has dual citizenship or who is watching this in Russia, for example, what would you say to them? You know, what advice would you have for them? And also, what would you tell to people who want to come to visit Russia, but now kind of go, Jesus, if I go to Russia, if I try to normalize relations, if I try to see people as people, I could be like Mark.
Yeah, it's very sad. Isn't that very sad? I'd say anyone who wants to come to Russia, come. It's the best country in the world. People here have been so supportive of me, not just now, the whole time I've been here. I first came here when I was 17. It was my passion from a childhood. Came to visit twice when I was 17, came to live here when I was 18, taught myself the language. Come and visit. It's the best country in the world. It's got the nicest people. It's the best thing I ever did coming to this country. So don't be put off by that. The regimes in the UK and Ireland won't last. I mean, Ireland's a surprise. You know, Ireland with its history and its love of, you know, liberty and its, you know, rebellious spirit. I'm amazed what's gone on in Ireland in the last few years. You know, it's almost as bad as the UK, possibly even worse. So don't be put off coming from Russia. You know, people here are lovely, welcoming. They're far more knowledgeable about the situation and what's being said and than people in the West are. So yeah, don't come to Russia. You won't have any problems. As for advice to people who might find themselves in a similar situation, it's difficult. You know, the ball's only just really rolling for me now. So maybe, yeah, maybe it is a good idea to speak to the media, try and find independent legal advice. But you know, I was really worried about telling people, and now I have to, and I shouldn't have been really, because it's been like a huge weight off my shoulders now that I have been able to tell people, because that was causing me a lot of stress. So yeah, I mean, I'm not really. I can't give advice. You know, I'm not an expert on this. I was just living a quiet life. No, I can't give any expert advice at all, I'm afraid, Alan.
It's just a small question, which I think is logical. People will want to know as well. Have they got dual citizenship?
No, they don't. They were born here, all born here. Very patriotic Russians. They go to the normal local SADC, not an international school. They go to a local SADC, and the local 3 at SADC, one at school, SADC nursery, I should say. Speak Russian. Russian's their first language. They're fully Russian, and I'm very happy about that.
Okay, no, because again, it would be very strange for. I'm thinking it's just said with my son who's like dual nationality that if I for some reason was banned from ever coming into Ireland, and yet he could travel back, it just doesn't make sense. Obviously, with the oldest boy. Mark, before we wrap up, just want to ask that looking forward into the future. And of course, now you have, thanks to with media exposure, that you have the opportunity that people have reached out to you to say, look, we'll take on your case, which again, it's good for them because it'll be publicity for them. It's good. It's also good for human rights. And I know you say that you're very happy in Russia. That's the truth. I know that for a fact. Is it a matter of principle that you get your citizenship back?
It's a matter of principle that I appeal, because I still don't know what I've done, and they won't tell me what I've done. They sent me redacted 2 bits of paper, completely blacked out. So I've got no idea what I'm supposed to have done. The only way I can find out is through an appeal, and I hope that I'll appeal. They'll fight the case, win. They'll see it's ridiculous, and I'll at least I'll get an apology. And if I get my citizenship back, I understand they've passed a new law recently to make it even harder to get citizenship back. I think because of the bedroom case, but I'm not an expert. So if I get it back, it'll be nice. If I don't, I'll live with it. I'm not really fussed. But I'd like to find out what they think I'm supposed to have done.
Yeah, I think especially coming from an international objective that you've always been at, like looking abroad, looking bigger than yourself, bigger than like the community, and sort of trying to, I say mix and match, basically trying to build bridges. The whole unfairness of it all and the lack of transparency. Mm-hmm. I mean, as you mentioned, as an Irish person, it's not a surprise that this happens in the UK. We've seen it with our own people, but it was different. And I say different in that I'm not condoning what happened to the Guildford 4, Birmingham 6, nothing like that. But there was a time when there was terror that they couldn't catch the culprits, that they basically had to make an example. Right or wrong? Again, wrong. What the different police forces did in Birmingham and Guildford
terrible.
Was wrong. However, you can kind of go, bombs going on, people getting killed. It's, they had to sort of find people, so they just basically did what they did. But with you, it's like, it's not just grabbing an innocent person, it's trying to make an example of an innocent person and basically tarring you, to basically tainting you. From the feedback you've gotten from former colleagues in the force back home, what's their take on it?
Well, there's only one former colleague who still speaks to me. So the rest. Well, no, that's not true. No, there's a couple. There's a few who've since retired. Well, actually, there's 3 or 4 they've actually left the police, so they can talk to me, so they're fine. Like you say, fitting people up is nothing new in British law enforcement. It's it's part and parcel of things over there. But yeah, it's just a shock. You don't think it would happen to you, do you?
No.
But as someone said to me, there's no good doing it to these guys, say if they've signed up for the SMO or they're on RT, presenting on RT. There's no good doing it to them because people will rationalize it and say, oh, that's not going to happen to me. I'm not doing that. But if it just happens to someone who just lives here, who has got a link to the sponsor of his company, is linked to the Russian, what can I say? I don't know. There's no excuse for it. There's no reason for it. I think it's despicable what they've done, and I can't excuse it. I can't explain it.
Mark, on that note, I'll say thank you so much for joining us, for making your debut. I hope you'll come back soon to have a chat with Andrew and, of course, with our legal Esel Cody. Don't give up the fight. Stay strong, and fingers crossed next time we speak, you'll have much better news.
Thanks very much for having me, Alan. Do swidania.